It's the new year of 2024 and after 2 months of doing nothing, I'm finally gonna talk about Sonic Superstars. But instead of talking about the whole game itself, since that would be a chore I don't feel like dealing with, instead, I'ma talk about my favorite character and mode in the game, Trip's story. Now before we discuss peak fiction, I want to give my brief thoughts on the main story of Superstars, and honestly, it was fine. I loved the way the game looked and I thought the zones were original enough to keep me invested in the game. The level design was focused more on platforming than in Mania, and I found the sense of speed more rewarding here than Mania's tedious platforming, and the speed in that game feeling automated. The characters in Superstars were fun to play as, especially Amy, because double jumps and platformers makes them so much more fun honestly, but overall, the game is fine. I didn't think much of it at the time. But after going through the final boss with the Egg Samurai, which has awesome music, you unlock Trip as a playable character. Now Trip was designed by Sonic and Amy's original character designer, Naoto Oshima, and throughout most of the game is a reluctant villain, who gets completely bullied by Fang throughout the whole game, until she becomes a dragon and destroys his mech, becoming friends with Team Sonic in the process. After the main game you get to play through her own campaign with altered level design and harder bosses. This, alongside the way Trips plays, is what really made me love this game because she is the best character to play as in this game alongside Tails. Not only is she as fast as Tails in Sonic without his drop dash, but she can double jump like Amy and has better wall climbing than Knuckles, since she can also climb curved walls as well, and is basically a better version of the Spike Wisp from Sonic Colors. With good optimization you can do so much in these levels, and beat them in record time. So instead of yapping about how well she's designed not only as a character, but also how well her gameplay is designed, I just want to talk about the level design, because it's also really good. Bridge Island isn't that hard besides a few walls to climb, and a boss that will completely curb stomp you if you're not paying attention. Speed Jungle on the other hand has a ton of bottomless pits now, but then there's so many cool skips you can pull of the vine rails with your double jump and it's just so much fun. And because there's only one character you can play as in this mode, you can play through the Fang fight in Speed Jungle as Trip, and while the music is trash, the fight is really fun. However, you need to take note of these lasers because they will be very important later. Sky Temple is up next and they didn't change much here besides more enemies and a boss fight sucking balls now. The Egg Robot decided to become freaking Doomslayer and fires like 27 saw blades at you. I got stuck here for a while and is easily the second hardest boss in this mode. The real hardest boss will make you cry, trust me. Anyways, Pinball Carnival comes after, and here is where they start to bring blockades that require the emerald powers, so you better have collected them in the main game. Besides that, this level isn't very different and the boss is piss easy with Super Trip. I can't give much praise to Lagoon City, since the Amy act is absolute crap in this game, like genuine terrible because most of the fruit is meant to be yanked out for existence with Amy's hammer drop dash thingy, but because Trip doesn't have that you have to jump on them and it's very clunky. And the Act 2 boss is hard here. Maybe it's because I played as Tails during this boss in the main game so I could just swim, but even then, the second phase of the boss is way longer and the platforms are higher, which makes this boss way more annoying than it needed to be. However, I have the complete opposite feeling towards Sand Sanctuary, which is the best level in this entire game. It may only have one act, but damn did they take advantage of that one act. This level is so much fun to speed run through since, if you're careful enough, you can skip entire segments of this level, making this go from a 7-minute level to a 2 or even 1.5 minute level. I also love the conveyor belt things in the level, the rotating saws, and especially the giant snake that can bounce you around and act as an elevating platform that you can jump off of. This might honestly be one of my favorite Sonic levels ever just because of how expansive the level is. It feels like Sandopolis but actually fun, and with better music. The only real problem is the boss though. They really got to start fixing these annoying as hell bosses, although, this one's not as bad as the others. Following the peak of this game is Press Factory and this level is pretty good. Act 1 is a little annoying with the hydraulic press in the background constantly making you jump, especially with there being more spikes in Trip's version of the level, but I think it's a fun obstacle to overcome. And if there's one thing that Act 1 succeeds at more than Sand Sanctuary, it's the music and the action. This level has so much going on but also so much energy, because while you're running through the level, you have to constantly bounce into this electric grid thingy to damage the hydraulic press, alongside the traps that will try to capture you and blow you up, and the music really captures the hectic nature of this level with the fast tempo and a jamming saw at the beginning of the song building up to THR chorus. It's a really awesome song. But then Act 2 just pumps up the energy even more. Now after you defeated the electric baboon and recreated Hiroshima, the explosion from the press causes the factory to destabilize, soon to self-destruct, with an egg drone in the background showing you how much time you have. You need to rush to the end while at the same time pressing these switches to stop the place from blowing up, and if you fail, you die instantly. This is an interesting take on the oil, ocean and Sandapulus Act 2 timer gimmick, but honestly this level does this mechanic so much better than the previous two examples simply because your actions in previous act carries so much more weight here. And I think it's because Act 2 of this zone reminds me of the bad futures from Sonic CD. In that game the bad futures only exist because you didn't go back into the past and stop the robot generators. Your actions actually have some consequences, and while its effect is heavily reduced here due to the lack of time travel, but I still think it hits similar to the bad futures from CD. And in Trip's story, there's an alternate path that you can access with Trip that, like Sand Sanctuary, lets you skip a lot of level design. And you will literally only find this if you go out of your way and explore the level. Besides the excellent theming and level design, the music is also spectacular. It's fast-paced like the first act, but instead of having an uplifting melody, it has a more menacing dreary melody that pushes you to the end, while also playing around with some echo with the main lead, alongside the excellent FM guitar in the background. Overall amazing level with excellent theming. If it wasn't for Sand Sanctuary, this would be my #1 zone in this game, just for the stellar set pieces and attention to detail. After this we have Golden Capital, which was an amazing zone and was a lot of fun as Trip, since you can cling to a lot of the curved surfaces in the level, and made all the bouncy pinball stuff a lot of fun. This level is based off of concept art by Oshima for Sonic 1, and this level is the best in this game in terms of theming. The music is so chill and is a real vibe. The gold and white checkerboard patterns and the sun face loops are so majestic, and when it comes to vibes, this level hits everything I'd want in a Sonic level. The boss of the first act is piss easy with Trip since you can just double jump the pig while it's on the roof. Golden Capital Act 2 isn't very different from the first act. The only new thing they introduce is the flying turtle sections and an annoying ass boss fight. Okay, like genuinely, who thought that making the second longest boss fight in the game last longer would be a good idea? Like, the camera's too close, the boss takes too long because of the parts where Fang is upgrading the Marvelous Queen take God knows how long. The music is so repetitive that it genuinely gets annoying. For all my praise of this game and this mode, some bosses sucks, and this is the worst one in the game by far. Golden Capital overall is okay. After that terrible Fang boss, you get to play one of my favorite Sonic levels ever, Cyber Station Zone. This level is just so cool as it actually uses the digital theme really well. All the enemies have their models made out of voxels, and even Trip gets turned into a voxel, getting all the unique voxel forms. Some would call this stage extremely gimmicky, but honestly it's just really damn cool, and almost all the forms you take are designed well. Alongside that, in Trip's story it makes some of these harder, but you can avoid them by making your way to the top path. The music is also really good, and while it's shorter than most of June's songs in this game, it's still a bop and a half, and I love its fast and moody feel. I think this might be the first time I praise a boss here, but this boss is so dope. So if you actually took time out of your life to try the battle mode, and I mean, you should, since it's good. You get to fight your own metal fighter, or if you're lazy, just the prototype. And this is such a cool idea. Letting the player fight their own creation is a neat idea, and even before this in Sky Temple you'll see Eggman running off with your metal fighter, and this is just really nice to see. Once again, the attention to detail here when it comes to this levels. Overall, Cyber Station is one of the best levels in the game. Next up is Frozen Base, and this is a pretty forgettable level. Act 1 is fun with the switching conveyor belts, and the music there is notable for being a remix of the main theme of this game, probably since this is the penultimate zone, so having a remix of the title theme makes quite a lot of sense. After Act 1, instead of playing the shooting level, like Lagoon City and Speed Jungle before it, you now have to play the character-exclusive act, and this isn't very fun. This time it's Tails level, and while I thought before in the main game this level was fun, with absolutely funky music, here I don't really feel the same because of the amount of egg robels in this level. In Trip's story they spam egg robels a lot, and it's not very fun to deal with at first, since you probably don't know that they can snipe you, making it extremely annoying in a level like this one, where you're climbing a lot because this level was designed for a flying character. And now because the stupid egg robo hit you, you now fall all the way to the bottom path, and this is just irritating. It's not the worst thing since it doesn't even last that long, but at the same time with the amount of times you'll get hit, it will make you feel like you've been in this level for way longer. But don't worry, after going through what seems to be a pretty mediocre zone, you get to experience one of the coolest references in Sonic history. They brought back Fantasy Zone and it's really fun. It seems people don't like when their Sonic games become shoot-'em-ups, but honestly I love the end boss fight in Frontiers, and I loved Frozen Base Act 2 as well. It was just really fun honestly playing through Fantasy Zone again, and while in the main game, each egg mobile you ride is based off the egg mobile from the character's originating game, which I set a nice detail. Here since you're playing as Trip, she gets to ride the Egg Scorcher, which is also really cool. Overall fun zone and was redeemed by the Fantasy Zone reference. Call me biased, I don't care, it was still really cool. Now we reach the final zone in this game, Egg Fortress, and while I know most people will call this zone just another death egg, but I think it does something really cool with the final zone in space thing. This zone gives me a spy feel, especially with music and the laser obstacles, and while it's not very unique, the lasers, the platforms that spawn and much more, I thought this first act was pretty cool. Act 2 however does something no 2D Sonic game has done before, play the level again but all in reverse, which was such a cool surprise on my first playthrough. In my run of this through Trip's story, I use the yellow emerald snow powers a lot, since enemies will get thrown at you a lot, and for some damn reason the Egg Robo is immune to time reversal. Overall great final zone. After going Quicksilver you see Fang appear instead of Eggman, and remember earlier, when I said to pay attention to Fang's lasers in the Speed Jungle fight, this was why. Artist has decided randomly that they have to one-up every Sonic game, and put the hardest boss in the series, and while most PPL despise this boss, I love it. Now first let me say this boss is where you will spend the majority of your time in this mode. You will die multiple times and restart this fight from the beginning, multiple times. It was hard to go through this fight against Fang, it really was, but honestly, what a dope way to end this mode. The music is intense, Fang pulls out every single weapon of his through the game, his insta-kill lasers, his clones, and much more. But what I was just describing is the first phase, which takes 6 hits to beat. After beating that, you have to fight Fang and his mech from Golden Capital, and while this is sick, it's really hard as you have to hit the badniks at him, hit the bouncy bombs at him, avoid his snore guns and the webs that can insta-kill you. You have to avoid this bullshit attack that comes after like 5 hits where he smashes the floor so quickly, giving you no time to react to it, and making you restart the fight. That one move is the only thing here that I will say is crap, since the rest of the boss is pretty pattern-based. Once you memorize the pattern you could probably beat this boss in record time, but in your first playthrough, this will be very hard. After going through all that and beating the shit out of Fang, Trip's story is complete. You get a cutscene afterwards where she escapes the Egg Fortress and returning to the North Star Islands, where Sonic and Tails congratulate Trip for saving the islands from the Egg Robo and Fang. And yeah, that's it really, Trip's story is over. I know there's a true final boss after this, but I'm not gonna talk about it. My final verdict on Trip's story is that, what makes this mode fun, is Trip herself and the already great level design. She's fun to play as and the levels are well suited for her. Some of the changes like the new enemies and level design are cool, and makes this game pretty fresh after you already beat it. And even if you're not willing to go through Trip's story, or you find it too hard, go through main game again as Trip, as you can play as her there, and I'm sure then you will have a lot of fun with it. Overall I'm happy we finally got a new Sonic character to play as, and that Trip is as well designed and fun to play as she is. And I'm also glad that we finally have an all-original 2D Sonic game to play after 11 years, and while it isn't the most unique, and doesn't push the series as far as most would want, I still think this game does what it needs to be fresh, while still being faithful to the classics. But that's all I have to say about Trip's story and Sonic Superstars for now. Until next time, bye.